Maya Reeve pressed her forehead lightly against the cold airplane window as the clouds drifted beneath her like shifting sheets of white satin. It was the earliest flight out of Chicago, and the cabin still held that sleepy silence where people whispered instead of spoke. Maya's heart, however, was anything but quiet. Every few seconds she checked her phone, then locked it, then checked it again, rereading the last message Ethan had sent before she boarded. "Can't wait to finally hold you. Safe." 8 months of late-night calls, whispered confessions, and fragile hopes had all led to this moment, the flight that was supposed to turn their digital love into something real. She could almost hear her sister Lena's voice warning her not to rush, not to trust too easily, not after everything that happened last year. But for the first time in a long time, Maya wanted to believe in something good. She wanted to believe in him. The plane trembled slightly as it descended toward Florida, and her stomach fluttered with a mix of excitement and doubt. She imagined Ethan standing at the terminal exit, smiling in that way he only did during video calls, the way that made her feel chosen. But something inside her nudged quietly, a whisper she refused to listen to, fear disguised as intuition. She scrolled through their chat history, landing on a picture he'd sent 2 nights ago. He looked handsome, thoughtful, the kind of man who appeared steady even through a screen. Still, there were moments he seemed too perfect, too careful, as if every word he said to her had been polished before he spoke it. She brushed the thought aside. Today wasn't about doubt, it was about possibility. The wheels touched down with a heavy jolt, pulling her back into the present. She straightened in her seat, smoothed her hair, and forced a steady breath. The airport at sunrise looked golden and unreal, like the beginning of a story she desperately needed to end differently than the last one. She grabbed her carry-on and stepped into the aisle, her pulse racing. As she walked through the bustling terminal, she filmed a short video for Lena. "I'm here," she whispered with a soft smile. "I'll text you once I meet him." She didn't mention the knot in her stomach, the one tightening with every step closer to the exit doors. When the automatic doors slid open, warm, humid air swept around her, and there he was, Ethan Cole, taller than she expected, lean, sun-kissed, and smiling in a way that should have calmed her. But his eyes held something unreadable, a shadow that flickered and vanished before she could name it. "Maya," he said, pulling her into a hug that lasted a second too long. "Hi," she whispered, trying to steady her breathing. For a moment the world felt suspended between anticipation and unease. Ethan released her and grabbed her bag. "Come on," he said, voice smooth but strangely urgent. "I've got the whole day planned." And though Maya tried to smile back, a chill moved through her, one that told her this reunion might not unfold the way she hoped. As they walked toward the parking garage, Maya sensed the first subtle shift in his demeanor, a tension forming between them. Ethan walked a few steps ahead of her through the dim concrete parking garage, the sound of their footsteps echoing sharply in the still air. Maya tightened her grip on her purse, forcing herself to match his pace even as that faint tension she sensed earlier lingered in the space between them. She told herself it was nothing more than nerves. 8 months of imagining this moment had finally collided with reality, and reality was always messier than fantasy. Still, she wished he'd slowed down, given her time to breathe. When they reached a grey sedan, Ethan unlocked it and opened the passenger door for her. "Here you go," he said with a smile that looked perfect but felt strangely practiced. "Thank you," she murmured, sliding in. The interior smelled like a mixture of ocean breeze, air freshener, and something faintly chemical she couldn't place. As Ethan settled into the driver's seat, he glanced at her quickly, almost like he was checking to make sure she was really there. "So," he said, starting the engine, "you hungry? I thought we'd grab breakfast on the beach." "That sounds nice," she replied, though her voice came out softer than she intended. He drove smoothly, confidently, navigating the winding exit ramp. She caught his profile in the glow of passing lights, sharp jawline, neatly trimmed beard, the slightest crease between his brows. On video calls he always appeared relaxed, easygoing, almost too calm. But here, sitting next to him in real life, she noticed things she couldn't before: the stiffness in his shoulders, the way his fingers tapped the steering wheel whenever silence filled the car, the occasional sideways glance as if he were evaluating her. "So," he said again, "do I look like how you expected?" She laughed weakly. "Yeah, mostly, do I?" He looked at her longer this time, and for a moment the tension broke. His expression softened into something genuine. "You're even prettier in person." Heat rose to her cheeks. "Thank you." But just as quickly as the warmth appeared, it faded. Ethan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly as he turned back to the road, as though complimenting her cost him something. They drove along the coastline, palm trees swaying in the breeze, sunlight painting the water in streaks of bright gold. She tried to take comfort in the beauty around them, but her chest felt heavy with unspoken questions. Was he nervous too, or was something else going on? He pointed toward the water. "This is my favorite stretch of shoreline. Not many people come here in the mornings." "It's beautiful," she said. "I can see why you like it." "Mornings are quiet," he added, almost to himself. Maya shifted slightly. She wanted to ask about the locked room she noticed in their video tour of his condo, the one he always skipped. But that felt too forward, too early. Instead, she asked, "So what's the plan for the day?" He smiled without showing his teeth. "Surprises. I want today to feel special for both of us." She returned his smile, though confusion prickled at the edges of her thoughts. His tone didn't match the sweetness of his words. Something about it felt anticipatory. When they arrived at a small beachside cafe, Ethan placed his hand on the small of her back as they walked in. His touch was firm, guiding, possessive. Maya froze for half a second, startled, before forcing herself to move with him. Inside, they ordered breakfast and found a table facing the ocean. The waves crashed rhythmically against the shore, but Ethan's presence felt louder. "So," she said gently, "you seem a little tense." His eyes narrowed briefly before smoothing into a smile. "Just excited. I've been waiting for this for a long time." She nodded, though the unease returned heavier now. As they finished eating, Ethan leaned forward. "There's somewhere I want to take you after this, somewhere private." A subtle chill danced up her spine because something in his voice made her realize she wasn't sure she wanted to know where. And as Maya followed him back to the car, she sensed that whatever waited next would reveal the parts of Ethan she had never seen on a screen. Maya followed Ethan up the narrow stairs to his condo, each step echoing faintly as the sun dipped into a dimming horizon. The drive after breakfast had been quiet, too quiet, and although Ethan had smiled occasionally, his silence felt weighted, as if he were thinking through something he didn't want to share. By the time they reached his building, the air had shifted from warm to unsettling, thick with humidity and something like unspoken tension. The hallway outside his unit smelled faintly of chlorine from the nearby pool. Ethan unlocked the door with a quick, almost anxious twist of his wrist. "Come in," he said, holding the door open. His voice sounded both polite and strangely distant. The condo was modern, almost minimalist. A soft grey sofa faced a large TV and long windows looked out toward the water. But what caught Maya's attention immediately were the small black cameras mounted in opposite corners of the living room, subtle, sleek, pointed toward the main space. "You have a security system?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Yeah," he replied too quickly. "Just for safety. Break-ins happen around here." She nodded, though something in his tone suggested the cameras weren't just for burglars. As she placed her purse on the counter, Ethan moved into the kitchen, opening a cabinet with rehearsed familiarity. "You want something to drink?" he asked. "Water, tea, water's fine." While he filled a glass, Maya's eyes drifted toward a closed door near the hallway, a dark wooden door with a keypad lock instead of a normal handle. The same door he always skipped during their video calls. Seeing it in person sent a faint shiver over her arms. "What's that room?" she asked gently. Ethan paused for a single second before turning around. "Storage," he said, smiling thinly. "Just old stuff." His answer came too quickly, too perfectly. She forced a nod, pretending not to notice the way he avoided meeting her eyes. As the evening deepened, they sat together on the sofa, sipping their drinks, making small talk that felt increasingly hollow. The ocean outside roared softly beneath the rising wind. Maya kept waiting for Ethan to relax, to become the version of him she knew from their calls. But instead, he seemed to switch between two modes, overly attentive one moment, disconnected the next. At one point, his hand brushed her knee, lingering a heartbeat longer than she expected. She froze, not because she feared him, but because the gesture felt less affectionate and more possessive, as if he were testing her response. "You're quieter than usual," she said cautiously. "So are you," he replied. She swallowed. "It's just a lot to take in, being here, finally meeting." He looked at her, then really looked, and for the first time she saw something behind his expression that made her stomach tighten. Not anger, not fear, something colder, calculating. "You'll get used to it," he murmured. Used to what? She wanted to ask, but her throat tightened. Night fell fully, wrapping the room in shadows softened only by the glow of a lamp. The storm clouds rolling in earlier had finally gathered overhead, rumbling low like distant warning drums. When thunder cracked, Maya flinched and Ethan stood abruptly. "Let me show you the balcony," he said. "View's better at night." "I'm okay," she said quickly, unsure why the idea unsettled her. His jaw tightened before he forced a smile. "Another time then." The tension grew thicker. She tried to break it with conversation, but Ethan grew more withdrawn, pacing slightly, checking his phone, glancing toward the locked door. By midnight, exhaustion tugged at her, but unease kept her awake. She lay on the sofa while Ethan disappeared briefly into the hallway, hearing faint rustling behind the locked door, soft movements she couldn't explain. When he returned, his expression was unreadable. "You should sleep," he said gently. "We have a big day tomorrow." Maya nodded, though anxiety twisted inside her. And as the storm raged outside, she sensed that something in this condo, something hidden, something locked away, would become the beginning of her unraveling. Morning crept slowly into the condo, pale and muted, slipping through the blinds like a timid intruder. It had been 12 hours since Maya first stepped inside Ethan's home, and the storm from the night before had left the world outside washed out and eerily quiet. Lena's unread messages still glowed on Maya's phone screen, the device resting on the coffee table exactly where she'd left it. Yet Maya herself was nowhere to be found. The silence inside the condo felt heavy, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for someone to notice that something was terribly, irreversibly wrong. Ethan stood in the kitchen, staring at the untouched glass of water Maya had placed there the night before. His expression was strangely composed, almost thoughtful, but his fingers tapped the counter in sharp, impatient rhythms. The cameras in the corners blinked red, recording everything and nothing at once. Outside, the sky brightened only slightly. The morning sun seemed reluctant to expose what had happened within these walls. Ethan checked his phone, typed something, erased it, typed again, then abruptly stopped. With a controlled breath, he slipped the device into his pocket and walked toward the door as if rehearsing a role he already knew he'd have to perform. Downstairs, a hotel clerk named Marlin, who handled luggage storage for nearby condos, noticed a rolling suitcase left abandoned beside the elevator. The luggage tag read Maya Reeve in black marker. Marlin waited, scanning the lobby for a young woman who might return to claim it. No one appeared. Minutes stretched into almost an hour. A strange instinct tugged at him. Something about the untouched suitcase, the too quiet morning, the storm-dampened walkway outside. Finally, uneasy, Marlin contacted the building supervisor, who in turn contacted law enforcement. By the time officers arrived, Maya had been missing for approximately 12 hours. At the marina 3 blocks away, a groundskeeper sweeping debris left by the storm noticed fragments of glass glittering near the edge of the pier. At first, he assumed it was the usual aftermath of a careless tourist, but then he spotted something else, something that made him bend down, heart sinking. A smartphone, its screen spiderwebbed into shards, lay abandoned halfway between the dock and the water. When an officer arrived and collected it, the faint wallpaper image, a blurry selfie of two sisters, was still visible beneath the cracks. The phone's last outgoing call had been attempted at 1:13 a.m., but it never connected. Meanwhile, security footage from the marina office revealed a haunting glimpse of the night before. Maya walking alone along the pier, wind whipping her hair, her posture tense and hurried. She glanced back repeatedly as though someone was following her. Then the footage cut abruptly, just a flick of static and darkness before the camera resumed several minutes later, showing nothing but the empty dock. The missing stretch of footage deepened the mystery, raising more questions than answers. When officers knocked on Ethan's door shortly after, he answered calmly, even offering a confused smile. "Maya," he repeated. "She left during the night. I thought she needed air. She never came back." But something in his voice, too steady, too practiced, made the lead officer's skin crawl. And as the report of a missing woman spread through Fort Lauderdale, the call no family ever wants to receive was already making its way toward Lena Reeve's phone. Lena Reeve was halfway through her morning shift at the dental clinic when her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar Florida number. She almost ignored it. Telemarketers were relentless, but something in her chest tightened, a quiet instinct urging her to answer. She wiped her hands, stepped into the hallway, and pressed the phone to her ear. "Hello, is this Lena Reeve?" The voice was calm, official, and wrong in a way she felt before she understood it. "Yes, who's calling?" "This is Officer Daniel Ruiz with the Fort Lauderdale Police Department. I'm calling about your sister Maya." The moment he said Maya's name, Lena's breath locked in her chest, the walls around her blurred. "What about her? She landed last night. She texted me. What happened?" "There's been an incident," Officer Ruiz said gently. "Your sister has been reported missing." The world tilted. Lena pressed her back against the wall, gripping her phone so tightly her fingers went numb. No, that can't be right. She's visiting her boyfriend, Ethan. She's with him. She's fine. She has to be." "I understand this is difficult," the officer continued, "but her belongings were found unattended and her phone was recovered damaged near the marina. We're trying to locate her." Lena shook her head, though he couldn't see it. "Damaged? What do you mean damaged?" "There's evidence it may have been dropped during a struggle," he said carefully. "We can't confirm that yet, but the timing is concerning." Her pulse hammered violently. "Put me on a plane. I'm coming there right now." "We'll help you in any way we can," Ruiz assured her. "But before you arrive, there's something else you need to know. We've spoken with the man she was staying with." "Ethan," Lena's voice sharpened. "What did he say?" "He claims she walked out during the night and never returned." Lena closed her eyes. She remembered every late-night call with Maya, every whispered doubt, every attempt at reassurance. At first, Maya had sounded dizzy with hope, but over time, Lena noticed the hesitation creeping into her voice, the questions, the things Maya didn't say out loud. "Officer, he did something to her." The words slipped out before she could stop them. "We're investigating all possible angles," Ruiz replied, carefully non-committal. "But we do need your cooperation. Anything you know about their relationship could help." The hallway felt unbearably small. Co-workers peeked out of rooms, sensing something was wrong, but Lena could only focus on the officer's voice echoing through her mind. "I'll answer whatever you need," she said finally. "Just find my sister." After ending the call, Lena sank onto a bench, hands trembling violently. She scrolled through her messages, rereading the short video Maya sent from the airport. Her smile was hopeful, but her eyes, God, why hadn't she seen it then? Held something fragile, something unsure. A co-worker, Sarah, rushed over. "Lena, what happened? You're white as a sheet." Lena swallowed hard. "My sister, she's missing." The words tasted unreal, like speaking them out loud might summon a nightmare. Within the hour, Lena packed a small bag, booked the earliest flight to Florida, and contacted their mother, who dissolved into sobs so raw they barely sounded human. Every step Lena took felt mechanical, driven by a horrible clarity. Maya was in danger, and if she didn't act fast, she might never see her alive again. At the airport, Lena stood in line at security, staring numbly at the boarding pass in her hand. She thought of Maya's laughter, her stubborn optimism, the way she always believed in people even when they gave her every reason not to. And then she thought of Ethan, of the unreadable smile in his pictures, the man her sister had flown across the country to meet. The announcement for her flight echoed overhead, and Lena forced herself forward, pulse racing. Because somewhere in Florida, a man who claimed to love her sister was the last person to see her alive, and Lena intended to look him in the eyes herself. Ethan Cole sat stiffly at the small metal table inside the interview room, his hands clasped tightly together as if holding himself in place. The fluorescent light above flickered with a faint buzz, casting a cold glow over his face. He looked exhausted, but not in the way someone worried about a missing girlfriend should look. Instead, he appeared calculating, as though every expression he wore had been practiced in advance. Detective Ruiz entered with a file tucked under his arm. He closed the door gently behind him and took a seat opposite Ethan. For several seconds he didn't speak. He simply studied the man, absorbing every twitch, every breath, every forced attempt at calm. "You understand why we brought you back in?" Ruiz said finally. Ethan nodded. "I already told you everything. Maya left during the night. I didn't stop her. I didn't think she was in danger." Ruiz opened the file. "We're not saying you did. But we have questions we need answered, starting with your timeline." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I've given you the timeline." "Then we'll go through it again," Ruiz replied, tone even. "You claim she walked out sometime after midnight." "Yes, you didn't try calling her. She said she needed air. I assumed she'd come back." Ethan leaned back slightly, but the stiffness in his shoulders betrayed him. Ruiz tapped the file. Her phone was found shattered near the marina. Her luggage was found abandoned, and security footage shows her walking alone, looking over her shoulder repeatedly. Ethan swallowed hard. "What are you implying? That she may have been frightened?" "Of what?" Ethan snapped. "Of me. Is that what you're suggesting?" Ruiz didn't answer immediately. He tapped his pen softly against the table, watching Ethan flinch at the sound. "Tell me about your relationship with her." "You already know," Ethan muttered. "We met online. We talked for months. She came to visit, that's it." Ruiz raised a brow. "Neighbors report hearing raised voices last night." Ethan's expression flickered just for a moment before settling back into strained composure. "We weren't arguing. Maya was tired from traveling. She was emotional. And you?" "I was trying to calm her down." Ruiz leaned forward. "Did she mention being afraid of you?" "No," he said quickly, too quickly. "She wasn't afraid of me." The detective studied him in silence. Ethan's knee bounced under the table, a rhythmic, involuntary movement he couldn't seem to control. "Look," Ethan said after a moment, voice cracking just slightly, "I know how this looks, but I care about Maya. I wouldn't hurt her." Ruiz closed the file slowly. "Then help us find her." Ethan looked away. "I'm trying." When Ruiz stepped out of the room, Detective Holloway waited in the hall, arms crossed. "He's hiding something." Ruiz nodded. "He's too rehearsed, too controlled." "Think he's our guy?" "I think he knows more than he's saying." Meanwhile, in the condo Ethan shared with Maya the night before, forensic technicians moved quietly through the rooms. They dusted for prints, swabbed surfaces, and photographed every detail. When one technician approached the locked door with the keypad lock, she paused. "Ruiz said he gave us the code," she asked another. "Yeah, 1805. She entered the numbers. The lock clicked open. Inside the room, rows of shelves lined the walls, boxes, files, old electronics. But one detail stood out, a shrink-wrapped mattress leaning upright against the far wall, clean, unused, and beside it a bundle of rope partially concealed beneath a tarp. The technician exchanged a glance with her partner, dread creeping up her spine. Back at the station, Ruiz's phone buzzed. He listened as the forensic team described what they found, his expression darkening with every passing second. He hung up and turned to Holloway. "We're not done with Ethan Cole." Holloway nodded grimly, "Not by a long shot." And as Lena's plane descended into Florida's humid skyline, she had no idea she was walking straight into a storm of secrets far darker than she imagined. The hotel corridor felt unnervingly quiet when Detective Samir Darwish reached the third floor, the same floor where Eli had spent his final night. The soft hum of the air conditioning did little to ease the heaviness pressing against his thoughts. Every step echoed with the weight of the unanswered questions that had grown since the moment the call reached Miami. Now facing the hallway where Eli had last been alive, Samir felt the case shifting from a tragedy to something far darker. Room 314 stood at the end, sealed with bright yellow police tape. A uniformed officer lifted it for him as Samir ducked underneath and entered. The wooden door creaked faintly, as if reluctant to reveal what remained inside. He scanned the dim room, taking in the details, the half-open curtains, the untouched fruit basket on the table, the faint scent of cologne lingering in the air. Everything looked deceptively normal, almost staged. The lock showed no signs of forced entry. That alone troubled him more than any visible chaos would have. Someone Eli trusted had likely been the last person to step inside. Samir approached the bed, noting the rumpled sheets, the pillow pushed slightly to the edge, and the open suitcase on the floor. A folded shirt lay neatly on the armchair, suggesting Eli had been preparing to go somewhere or preparing to leave someone. He knelt beside the nightstand. A glass of water sat untouched, condensation dried to a thin ring. Next to it lay Eli's phone, screen cracked sharply across the center as if it had been slammed or stepped on. That detail pulled at Samir's instincts. Someone had wanted to destroy something, messages, calls, evidence, but hadn't finished the job. He picked up the device with gloved hands and slipped it into an evidence bag. The room felt heavier now, as if silently accusing him of being too late. A camera crew outside the hotel had shouted questions about Layla. Was she hiding something? Why hadn't she come forward sooner? Samir didn't know. but the atmosphere in the room suggested a private storm had erupted long before the family received the call. He scanned the carpet, noticing a faint scuff mark near the dresser as though furniture had been moved and returned. On the edge of the dresser lay a single earring, silver, small, delicate, not Eli's. The bathroom mirror held another clue. On its foggy surface, faint streaks hinted someone had wiped it hastily, erasing something, maybe a message, maybe a reflection they didn't want remembered. A drop towel lay near the shower drain, soaked more heavily than a quick rinse would explain. Samia stepped back, piecing the fragments together. Eli had met someone that night, someone who entered willingly, argued, panicked, or planned, someone who wanted the room to look untouched but missed details only trained eyes could see. Before leaving, he opened the closet. Inside hung Eli's jacket, pockets turned out. Whoever had searched them hadn't been thorough, they'd missed a receipt tucked beneath the inner lining. Samia unfolded it carefully. A timestamp, a location, a purchase made just hours before Eli's death. It was the first solid thread he'd found. He exited the room, sealing it once more, knowing the case had crossed a threshold. The locked room no longer held secrets, only directions pointing straight toward the next chapter, uncovering who Eli had trusted enough to let inside. Maya Hartman had always been the quiet one in the family, the observer, the keeper of other people's storms. While Eli was adventurous and impulsive, Maya preferred the safety of the background, offering advice only when asked and carrying everyone's burdens without complaint. But as she stood in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by boxes she hadn't touched in years, she realized that some secrets weighed too heavily to stay buried, especially now. The house was silent except for the soft ticking of the hallway clock, each second intensifying the dread settling deep in her chest. She had been trying to stay strong for their mother, for the extended family already whispering theories, for the growing crowd of online sleuths dissecting every detail of Eli's final hours. But the detective's call that morning, requesting anything she might remember, any detail Eli might have shared, left her shaken, because there were things Eli had told her, things she had dismissed as exaggerations or late-night anxieties, and now, revisiting them, felt like reopening a door she'd deliberately closed. She sat on the edge of her bed and opened the drawer of her nightstand. Inside lay an old journal, its edges worn, pages filled with her neat handwriting. She flipped to a bookmarked section. 3 weeks before Eli boarded the flight to Egypt, he had called her in the middle of the night. Maya had written down everything he said because his voice sounded different, scared, uncertain. Now, reading the words again, chills prickled her skin. Sometimes I think Layla isn't telling me everything. Her messages feel filtered. There's a man she keeps mentioning, always a family friend, but I think he's more than that. Maya closed her eyes, remembering the trembling uncertainty in Eli's voice. She had reassured him back then, telling him long-distance relationships came with misunderstandings, that people behaved differently online. She regretted every word now. As she searched through the journal, another memory surfaced. A month earlier, Eli had confided in her about receiving anonymous emails, cryptic warnings telling him to be careful who he trusted, and not everything you're promised is real. Maya had urged him to block the sender. He never told her if he did. Her phone buzzed, snapping her back to the moment. A message from Detective Samia, "Call me when you can, found something in the room." Her pulse quickened. She wondered if whatever he had found connected to the unease Eli had tried to share with her. She grabbed a small wooden box from beneath her bed. Inside were printed screenshots Eli had sent her months ago, conversations with Layla that didn't sit right with him. In some screenshots, replies came too quickly, too formal, unlike Layla's usual tone. In others, the typing bubbles would appear and vanish repeatedly, as though someone else was reviewing messages before sending them. And then there was the most unsettling one, a blurry photo Layla had accidentally sent before immediately deleting it. Eli managed to capture it in time. The picture showed the corner of a room Maya didn't recognize and a man's shadow cast across the floor. Maya swallowed hard. Whatever Eli had stepped into, it had begun long before the trip. She took a deep breath, gathered the journal, the box of screenshots, and the printed emails, then stood. For the first time since Eli's death, she felt a direction forming, a path she had to follow no matter where it led. Because the next chapter of this nightmare wouldn't be solved by detectives alone. It was time she shared everything she had once kept hidden. Detective Samia stood at the edge of the marina as the evening tide rolled in, the sky dimming to a bruised purple. The water looked deceptively calm, but he knew better. Calm water could hide anything: fear, violence, secrets. And according to the forensics team, it had already hidden enough. Maya arrived moments later, clutching the journal and the box of screenshots she had discovered. Her face was pale, but her steps were determined. She wasn't here as the grieving sister anymore. She was here as someone finally willing to reveal the pieces she had kept locked away. Samia greeted her with a small nod. "I'm glad you came. There's something you need to hear." She followed him toward a cordoned-off section of the dock where divers were emerging from the dark water, dripping and exhausted. One of them, a tall woman with cropped hair, pulled off her mask and approached. "We found it," she said quietly, "right where the witness claimed he saw splashing that night." Maya's breath caught. "Found what?" The diver held up a sealed evidence bag containing a piece of torn fabric, pale yellow, patterned with watercolor flowers. It was unmistakably the dress Eli had described Layla wearing in his last voice message. Samia watched Maya's reaction carefully. It was snagged on metal near the bottom, and that's not all. He motioned for the diver to continue. We also found marks on the dock posts, fresh scrapes like something heavy was dragged. Could be a body, could be luggage, could be equipment. Hard to say until we analyze it. Maya stared at the water, her thoughts spinning. Layla said she walked back to her friend's place. She said she never went near the water. Samir crossed his arms. Her story keeps changing, and there's more. The hotel parking cameras captured a car leaving at 2:14 a.m., a white sedan registered to Layla's family friend, the same man you mentioned in your notes. She opened her journal, flipping to the page where Eli had written about him. The unnamed man, the shadow in Layla's accidental photo. A chill crept over her. I think Eli was right, she whispered. Someone else was controlling parts of her life, maybe her messages, maybe more. Samia exhaled slowly. If that's true, then Eli might not have been her only victim. Before Maya could respond, a second diver jogged toward them, shouting, "Detective, you need to see this." They followed him to the far end of the pier, where several officers were gathered around a metal ladder descending into the water. At the base of the ladder, caught between two submerged rocks, something gleamed faintly. A phone, waterlogged, cracked, but intact enough to retrieve. The diver placed it in a container, found it wedged deep. This didn't fall there by accident. Samia glanced at Maya. If this is Eli's, it could hold every answer we've been missing: messages, meeting locations, calls. Maya felt her throat tighten. She imagined Eli gripping that phone in the final moments of fear or confusion. Imagined him trying to call her or record something or run. The device was lifted carefully into an evidence crate. Officers murmured about data recovery teams and forensic imaging. Maya didn't speak. She simply watched the water ripple, spreading out in widening circles like the truth finally rising. And somewhere beneath the surface, she felt the story twisting again, pulling her toward a deeper, darker revelation waiting ahead. Ethan sat back in the interview room, the low hum of the fluorescent lights pressing against his temples like a weight he could no longer shake. The walls had seemed tighter each time he had been questioned, the cold metal table more like a trap than a desk. He knew the detectives were watching him, watching for the smallest twitch or hesitation, but for the first time he felt a strange exhaustion, the kind that comes when a lie has been carried too far and the truth claws its way to the surface. Detective Ruiz leaned forward, his eyes locked on Ethan. "We've got everything we need. It's time to tell us exactly what happened." Ethan's hands clenched into fists under the table. His jaw tightened, and for a moment his gaze drifted toward the floor. The room smelled faintly of disinfectant, but beneath it he imagined the scent of saltwater, of the marina, of the night that had changed everything. I didn't mean for any of it to happen," he said quietly, voice shaking. "I just wanted her to stay, to understand me, to see me the way I see her." Ruiz's eyes narrowed. "Ethan, this isn't about feelings. Your story has to match reality." Ethan swallowed hard and began, words tumbling reluctantly. "Maya, she came here full of hope. She trusted me, and I wanted her to feel safe, special. But when she started asking questions about the things I'd done, the people I'd kept at a distance, I panicked. I couldn't explain. I thought if I could control the night, control the apartment, maybe I could control her understanding." Detective Holloway leaned in, voice low. "Control? Ethan, she vanished. You were the last one with her. We need the truth, no matter how dark." Ethan's lips trembled. "It started with the locked room. I never meant for her to see it. I thought she'd never ask. But when she did, she looked at me differently, suspicious. And then she started reaching for her phone, calling her sister, sending messages I couldn't intercept. I grabbed it from her. I only wanted a minute to calm her down, to talk." "Then what?" Ruiz asked sharply. I didn't hurt her. I didn't mean to, but when she pulled away, screamed, I lost control. I panicked." His voice cracked, raw and trembling. "I tried to contain it. I panicked and I moved her. I didn't know what else to do. I left the water edge thinking she'd be safe, thinking she could run, thinking she'd come back." Samia exchanged a glance with Ruiz. They had expected deflection, but the confession, the quiet tremor in his voice was chilling. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "Everything I told you, everything I tried to hide, it wasn't for cruelty. I thought I was protecting her from me, from the world, but I failed." Ruiz's voice was measured. "And the phone, the broken phone, the things she tried to call you with." Ethan shook his head, voice barely audible. "I thought if I could erase them, if I could prevent her from sending warnings, she'd stay. I didn't want anyone to know the truth about me, about us, about the mistakes I made." Silence filled the room. The weight of his words pressed down, unrelenting. For the first time, the detectives realized the danger had never been in an unknown intruder or random misfortune. The danger had been with the man Maya had chosen to trust. Ethan leaned forward, head in his hands, whispering, "I just wanted her to love me, to see me." And now, his sentence ended in a trembling pause. The room held its breath. Outside, the city moved on, unaware of the darkness that had lived hidden in one apartment until now. And as the interrogation continued, the detectives knew that Ethan's final story was only the beginning. The truth had opened a door that no one could close again. Detective Samir Darwish sat in the darkened surveillance room, the glow from multiple monitors reflecting off his tired eyes. The footage they had recovered from the marina and nearby security cameras had already revealed inconsistencies in Ethan Cole's statements, but there was one segment that had remained stubbornly elusive: the last 3 minutes before Maya disappeared. The analyst had extracted it in high resolution, but the moments it contained were enough to make a seasoned detective feel unsettled. Maya sat beside Samia, clutching the journal and the evidence she had brought, her knuckles white against the worn leather armrest. Her heart pounded every time the monitors flickered, every time a shadow moved across the screen. She had been dreading this moment, the moment when what she had feared all along would finally reveal itself. "Ready?" Samia asked, voice low. Maya nodded, swallowing hard. She had already memorized the frame-by-frame images, but seeing them again was different, more real. The footage began at 1:11 a.m., just 3 minutes before the timestamp where the previous frame had gone dark. Maya appeared first, walking along the pier toward the water, hood pulled over her head, shoulders hunched. Her pace was brisk but not panicked. Behind her, a figure emerged, Ethan. His movements were deliberate, almost calculated, and there was a rigidity to his posture that immediately made Samia uneasy. Maya's phone glowed faintly in her hand. She paused, tapping at it, turning briefly toward the shadows of the dock. Ethan approached from behind, his arms extended in what might have seemed a protective gesture, but Samia and Maya both saw it differently, a subtle but unmistakable push that forced her to stumble slightly toward the railing. A flash of lightning illuminated the scene, and for a split second the angle of the camera revealed something chilling. Ethan's face contorted in an expression that didn't match concern. There was a cold calculation in his eyes, the kind that left no room for misinterpretation. Maya's hands shot up instinctively, her phone slipping from her grip and clattering to the deck. In the next frame, she bent down to retrieve it. The camera angle briefly captured the water below, dark, churning, unyielding. Ethan's shadow stretched over her, moving with an unnatural stillness, and then a hand appeared, gripping her arm. She struggled, jerking backward. The footage trembled slightly, the camera shifting as though the person holding it or the wind interfered. Maya's breathing was audible through the enhanced audio track, rapid and panicked. She stepped backward, then stumbled, the railing catching her jacket's sleeve. Ethan's hand tightened, his body leaning forward. There was a split-second struggle, chaotic and desperate, captured in flashes between two surveillance angles, and then the final 3 minutes ended. The last frame froze on Maya's phone, lying face down on the pier, screen cracked, water pooling nearby. The camera recorded only silence after that, the faint lapping of the tide masking whatever had happened next. Samia exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. "That's all we've got. But it tells us enough. The last 3 minutes make it clear she didn't just disappear. Someone was with her, controlling every step." Maya pressed her hands against her mouth, feeling the nausea rise. "It's him, it has to be him, I saw it, he." "Yes," Samia said softly. "The footage confirms what Ethan's own story hinted at. Those minutes were everything. The question now is, how do we piece together what happens after the camera stopped recording?" Outside, the storm clouds that had lingered over the city since the night of Maya's disappearance began to break, revealing faint slivers of moonlight. But inside the room, the darkness persisted, heavy and suffocating. And with the final 3 minutes of footage now unmasked, the investigation was no longer a search for a missing person. It had become a hunt for the truth buried in the water, in the shadows, and in the lies Ethan had told. The morning air was thick with salt and fog as Detective Samia Darwish stepped onto the marina dock. Waves lapped softly against the pilings, whispering secrets that no one could hear, secrets the ocean had claimed and hidden. Maya followed behind him, journal clutched tightly, a small bundle of screenshots and evidence stuffed into her backpack. She had flown into Florida only hours ago, driven by desperation, fear, and a relentless need for answers. Now standing where the water met the pier, reality pressed down with an almost unbearable weight. The forensic team had begun their sweep at first light. Gloves, nets, and markers traced every piece of evidence left behind. The scattered rope, the tattered dress, the broken fragments of a phone. Each item told part of a story that had been interrupted, rewritten by fear, desperation, and cruelty. Maya's stomach churned as she watched them work. She imagined Eli's hands, struggling against the unknown, desperate to hold on to life, and the thought made her fists clench involuntarily. "Detective, over here," a diver called, pointing toward a shadowed section beneath the dock. Samia crouched beside the railing, leaning close to the water. A faint glimmer caught his eye. At first it seemed like sunlight reflecting off the ripples, but as the diver maneuvered closer, he saw it was something unnatural, an object partially buried in silt, only half visible to the naked eye. Samia signaled to pull it up. With a careful sweep of gloved hands, the diver extracted a small, waterproof case. It had been locked, waterlogged, and battered by the tide, but its contents were intact. Maya's phone, still active despite the damage, and a small USB drive wrapped in plastic. Maya felt her breath catch. That's hers," she whispered, voice shaking. She imagined her sister's last moments, the frantic tapping of a phone, the desperate messages she had tried to send. She tried to call someone who could have saved her. Samia handed the evidence carefully to his team. "We'll get everything recovered. This will tell us what really happened." His voice was low, tight with the weight of revelation. "The ocean doesn't erase evidence, it preserves it in its own way." As technicians worked, Maya moved closer to the edge, peering into the dark water below. Memories of the previous night came back in fragments. Ethan's shadow, the push, the struggle, the phone sliding into the rippling waves. It was all recorded somewhere, hidden, distorted, but not lost. The thought was both horrifying and comforting. Horrifying because of what she had imagined, comforting because the truth would no longer be solely his to manipulate. Hours passed as the tide slowly receded, revealing more remnants, pieces of rope frayed at the ends, a single silver earring and fragments of torn clothing. Each object was catalogued, photographed and stored. They weren't just items, they were breadcrumbs left by fear and violence, traces of the life someone had tried to erase. Maya could feel her sister in them, alive in the evidence, speaking silently to anyone who would listen. Finally, as the sun broke through the morning mist, casting pale gold across the water, Samia called the team together. "This is it. The ocean has given us its story. We've got her phone, the USB, the fragments. Every piece points back to Ethan Cole. We know now that he's the one responsible and the truth will come out." Maya exhaled, feeling the tension in her chest loosen slightly. The ocean had been cruel, but it had also been a witness. And for the first time since the disappearance, she felt a measure of hope. The truth was tangible, within reach, and the justice her sister deserved was finally possible. She turned away from the water, shoulders squared, eyes steady. Somewhere beneath the waves lay what had been lost, but on the dock, amid the scattered remnants and recovered evidence, the story was beginning to be told. And as the investigators packed their findings, preparing to confront the man who had orchestrated the nightmare, Maya realized that the ocean had left behind more than debris. It had left a path to the truth, one that no lie could ever fully bury.